COVID-19 is a global pandemic that has affected almost all the countries in the world. So it has a deeply affected socio-economic aspects of global population. The nationwide lockdown has also left migrant workers, industries, and farmers into an economic slowdown. Therefore, the context of this webinar is basically to address these issues. In collaboration with NIDM, Suresh Gyan Vihar University is to address the global local level impact of COVID-19 pandemic. The aim of the webinar is to analyze and address the socio-economic and pre-existing predicaments in the health sectors. So now I would like to call upon Dr. Shruti Kanga, the coordinator of C3WR, that is Climate Change and Water Research, uh, to address this seminar. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello. Okay. Hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear.
Yes. Okay. Myself, Dr. Shruti. I welcome you all webinar. Uh, I want to just thank NIDM for giving us this platform to present this webinar on global to of COVID. So thank you all on behalf of University. Myself, and hello. Hello.
Ma'am, the voice is little cracking up.
Yeah.
Hello.
Now it's clear.
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Then there is instruction.
Hello. Yes. Yes. So let me brief you first, our panelists and our advisor for the webinar. So first of all, I will introduce Major General M.K. Bindal. He is currently the Executive Director of NIDM. He was commissioned into the Corps of Army Air Defense in December 1985, an alumnus of esteemed National Defense Academy. Major General Bindal is graduate of Defense Service Staff College beside excelling in all other career courses in the Army. Having held all anchors of command within Air Defense Regiment in diverse theatre, he commanded an Air Defense Regiment and Air Defense Brigade in the Kashmir region against the backdrop of counter-insurgency operation. Major General Bindal served as Provost Marshal in United Nations in Mozambique, where he was deeply involved into the liquidation of the mission. He has been the director Center for United Nations Peacekeeping, New Delhi. For 3 years, he was also the secretary of International Association of Peacekeeping Training Centers. So this is about the Major General Bindal. Then we have our three panelists. First of all, we have Professor Santosh Kumar Singh with us. He is a disaster risk reduction, policy planning, and capacity development expert. Having experience of 25 years, Professor Santosh has discharged his service with the different positions in the development planning and DRR sector. He is PhD in economics and he studied gender and development in IDS Sussex University, UK, and received professional trainings in disaster risk management from Israel, backed with international work exposure, the World Bank, and international government body of SARC. He has also worked at state level in different capacity in UP Academy of Administration, Nainital, and RIPA Jaipur. He is an experienced hand in designing, planning, and implementing mitigation and long-term disaster recovery plans and projects. At international level, he has been contributing in shifting international and national policies by engaging himself in dialogues, negotiations, and participating in international strategic conferences. Then we have with us our second panelist as Dr. Manas Vishwas. He is currently working as an associate director, Gynae and Co. Surgery in Max Super Speciality Hospital, Saket, New Delhi. He is also the vice president of Association of Gynecologic Oncologists of India. He is an ex-army medical officer and has an extensive experience over a period of 14 distinguished years of service. He distinguished cancer specialist. Mr. Vishwas is also a lifetime member of European Society of Gynecological Oncology, Delhi Oncology Forum, and International Gynecological Cancer Society. So he has many published work dedicated to his research field. Then our third panelist was supposed to be Dr. Sudhanshu, who was the distinguished educationist and co-founder of our university, Suresh Gyan Vihar University. His contribution and transforming Gyan Vihar University into a world-class institution gone beyond the words. So unfortunately he has some very important assignments, so he is not able to join the meeting. So on his behalf, Dr. Suraj, another dynamic personality of our university, will join the conference, and I will briefly explain about him also. So Dr. Suraj is presently working as an associate professor in center and center coordinator of Center for Doctoral Training in SDGs. He has 12 years of teaching experience. Prior to this, Dr. Singh has worked as an faculty in eminent institutions like Central University of Jharkhand and Birla Institute of Technology, Mishra. Other than this, Dr.
Ma'am, the voice is gone.
See,
Yes.
hello.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So I was briefing about Dr. Suraj. Sorry for the interruptions. So he has an experience working with the NRSC and ISRO, and he has done various projects like Wasteland Escalator of India and National Urban Information System. Then he has many publications, book chapters, books into the various international and national levels of publication houses. He has also six PhD scholars under his guidance right now, and his specialization is in environmental modeling, flood and droughts, watershed prioritization and management, health GIS, geoheritage and geosites conservation and management. So this is about the brief about our panelists and our advisors. So sorry to tell you that Dr. Major General Binder, he is not able to join because of some very important official work. So Dr. Santosh from NIDM, he will read his message on his behalf, and then he will continue with the his talk. Sir, please, Santosh sir, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
My
Yes, sir.
voice is reaching?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much to all of you and the kind introduction which you have given, and the collaborative partners which we are doing in jointly with your esteemed institution and ours. I am currently taking the role of Major General N.K. Bindal, who is heading this institution as an executive director. He is not able to make it, so he has asked me to do the needful on his behalf. I just want to inform the audience about the National Institute of Disaster Management. National Institute of Disaster Management is a premier institution and only institution in the country which conducts a civil servant program for this capacity building program and research on the subject of disaster management. We are not into heavily into education, but we are heavily into training and research and policy support. Way back in 1995, this institution got established and became a statutory body in 2005. And since then, we have been working very closely with all the uh,
Sir, your voice is not coming at all, sir. Santosh, sir, your voice is not coming, sir.
And all are requested to please off their videos. Please don't, only voice coil is allowed. Off your videos except Priyanka. All are requested to off their videos because that create additional load in the server. So don't put your cameras in a on mode. Please do in off mode. Please, it's a request. Sir, can you listen us? Santosh sir. Wait. It's a problem related not from our end. It's from the other end. Wait, let him, he will solve. Santosh sir. And all are requested to put their mics off, cameras off. Don't put your mic and camera in on mode, that create additional load. It's requested, please off your cameras and mics. Yeah. On करो. हाँ, हमारे एंड से तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं. फोन प्रियंका.
Yes, sir.
Wait for another 2 minutes. If it doesn't work, we can continue with Vishwas sir presentation.
Okay, sir.
Santosh sir. फोन नहीं देखो.
sometime.
Yeah sir.
But I don't know whether my voice went to all of you or not.
Yeah, we can hear you sir. We can hear you.
Okay.
Hanji.
So
Yeah.
just I
I'm
wanted
calling on behalf
to
of
convey. I don't know whether I have spoken many things, but it has reached you or not. I don't know. But I just wanted to welcome once again on behalf of the
for
National Institute of
re-admission.
Disaster Management. And I would like to share my presentation,
So
which
you are going to exam, so you can
if
register
you
for
allow me
in
to
PAT in
move
IT
on.
University by 31st May. 31st May is the last May.
And I'm just sharing, I'm sharing my thing.
Last year, but they are offering.
Can you see my presentation? Can you see my presentation, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I have a couple of points to make in the beginning, and then maybe the question answer will emerge, and then I can respond. First thing which I would like to flag that yes, the COVID has done a real big damage to the global economy and including India. And we are not sure that how long it will continue. Because pandemic is still continuing, it has not been over yet. Many of the experts who are dealing with the as a health experts and public health experts, and many modeling have been done for India, and they have suggested that India is going to have a peak maybe in the month of June or maybe the July. So I'm not sure that peak yet reached or not, but the kind of experts advice which we are getting, and that is we are getting in terms of that its peak. So we have to prepare ourselves that in this uncertainties, we are not aware about that how much pandemic will continue. So the damage to the economy will keep continuing as it has not stopped the pandemic. So it is related. Or if we really stop pandemic today, then economy will start recovering. So that kind of, or if you go a coexistence of pandemic and economic recovery together, it's a really challenging, which every country is trying to do that. But let us have this pandemic going on and try to reduce this impact of pandemic by strengthening our health system and side by side also open the economy and open the lockdown and start working for the economic recovery. Because if, as we recall, our Prime Minister in the first two stages of lockdown, he mentioned about Jaan hai to jahan hai, means total lockdown, there is no economic activity, only essential services. At the second end of the second lockdown, he mentioned about Jaan hai or jahan bhi. So it means that the coexistence, he announced about the coexistence of economic recovery as well as this work on the mitigation of pandemic. So this is the main theme which I wanted to reflect upon. As an disaster management specialist and also as a student of economics, I flag these issues in terms of that what are the key issues for economic recovery. One is that we have to see that we redefining globalization. Can we say today that in the time of COVID-19, the globalization process has come to an end? Or we can say that obituary of the globalization can be, or there is a still hope that we would start the trade. So this is one issue that how we are starting our globalization process where the interdependence on each other is very much there. So this is one issue. How fast we can start the process of globalization. As long it is prolonged, that impact would be different on the economics. So that globalization leading to the international trade. So international trade, how much that international trade would be restored, what we were doing earlier. So how the COVID can give this as also an opportunity to rework on our economic system and start moving it. Third important thing which I would like to highlight in terms of interdependence. We have been now after 90 especially when India went for the open economy, and after that we are developing interdependence. We are working for other countries are working, we are making investment in other countries. So these interdependencies also in the COVID is a big challenge, that how and what kind of a size and shape it will take. In the time of uncertainties, we have to still redefine and we will define and in terms of re-strategize how the interdependence will be maintained. Similarly, that uncertainties of public health status for economic recovery, public health status would be very, very important. we are expecting that for economic recovery, that investment in the public health status will be much more needed. As long as it is going to be stronger, then our economy will also start to be. If that investment will not be there as per the requirement, then definitely economy will also not be there. So there is an interdependence in this also, that public health system and also that economic recovery. And you know that this COVID has created a serious cash crunch. We are earlier also cash crunch, but now this has actually magnified the problem of cash available in the hands of the people and in the hands of the investors. So that cash crunch leading to lack of effective demand. So this is a issue of how to create demand. If there is no demand, there will not be any supply. The supply will not be very much be a kind of a encouraged to make an investment. If there is no investment, there is no demand. And this demand is also very uncertain. You do not know what kind of a people are going to make choices. So supply chain depends on the type of demand which we are creating. So this is very, very important to understand that what is this choice which we are trying to make. Like any car company can make a very good car with all innovations and everything. But the consumer side, they are not interested in cars because they have learned in COVID that start living in the minimum. And that minimum will maybe stopping many not to go for luxury investment. So this kind of a thing would also emerge. So this is a challenge in economic recovery. We are not actually able to predict, and models are not working that what kind of other than the food grains and all, what kind of this demand would emerge in the kind of investment. Then availability of liquidity in the market. So how much liquid money is available for the investors to go for, how cheap and how dear. 1930s depression was different because 1930s depression was making a different choice. At that time, COVID was not there. So you were making investment freely, you were evolving many things. But here, that is your innovations are also restricted in the whole framework of COVID. So that has to be seen that what are the challenges of recovery. And unemployment benefits bill are also increasing. As you have seen in the US, already the Senate has passed a $3 billion just unemployment benefits bill. So the same way that how much India is going to spend for the unemployment benefits, or in the form of Manrega or other thing which will come, or the middle class unemployment, that is going to be a challenge to recover. Then it will come again, as I have already mentioned, uncertainties of COVID itself, that how long it will move. This is a very, very defining element. As long as it is existing, the slowing down would continue. We have to fight and we have to fly against the wind. So public health expenditure, labor market will be entirely different, and we will see that labor reforms have already been done, where the criticism is also coming, that people are not happy with the labor reforms. They're saying it's exploitative in nature, but somebody is saying that no, this is actually provide and it will break the cycle of unemployment and will help in getting cash in hands. So these are the dilemma, and India's perspective is entirely different. Let's see that how labor is making choice whether they wish to go back to their as a kind of their original position where they were working, or they will still not like to move from where they are now, where they've gone back to. So this is another challenge. So low interest rate affecting pensioners. Like low interest rate is going to be the reality for another say 5 years of time. And this low interest rate that this will discourage saving. So discouraging saving means like in India also there are a huge number of pensioners, they have deposited their money in surviving interest rate. So how their income would be affected, so their effective demand would also be affected. So, and the role of financial institutions and government policy. So remittances is another, what are the monetary and fiscal policy which government of India is going to bring, and you have seen that 20 lakh crores package is already there, and also some reforms have been made by the government. It's a very encouraging thing. And so how we are going to restore remittances, we probably have 28 to 30% remittances. So in the time of COVID, this will be seriously impacted. And other than this, that continued disaster and climate shocks which country would be facing, as you have seen, and Honorable Chief Minister of West Bengal is saying that the West Bengal has lost 1 lakh crores of damage due to this cyclone. So this would be additional burden to the state that how state is going to react upon. So in the time of cooperative federalism, when we talk about how this continued disasters and climate shocks would be helping. And certainly the global studies have already come and they are saying that the poverty will increase by 25% more. So they are saying that where we were 25 years ago, we will start from there itself. So these two things, these are the issues which I thought I would be flagging in the context of this. If you see that India before COVID, that July 2020 expected, until January 2020, our growth rate, GDP growth was 4.7. So here is this economic jerk we have got in the time of COVID. So if you see this 4.7 here, and see this how it is going to reflect and going to move away to 7% and 8% of growth rate, the 20 lakh crore package will start working from here itself, that how much we actually go. And if you see that in 2007, agriculture contribution in the GDP was 15.4%, industries product contribution was 23%, and service sector, which includes this tourism and travel also. So this is 61.5%, and this service sector is still not open. So this is a challenge. 20 lakh crore package will go here also, but currently in the fourth lockdown, agriculture and industries, these two are going to be open, and very partial opening of the service sector, which is having larger share of contribution. So if you see this, that how our these sectors have actually behaved in the past until January, all the sectors have a negative growth. So you can see that whether you talk about financial and real estate, which has 12% of the contribution, it also have a minus 3% growth rate. Mining and quarries is 14%. Electricity, gas, power is 13.9%. Construction, then trade and services have seen this minus 9.7% growth. So every sector, if you see, is having a negative. And now we have to see that challenge is these were the kind of allocations given by the government. This is the first total 20 lakh 97,053 crore. So I would stop here just to think on that how the issues which I have flagged, maybe I can continue and other panelists will mention. I'm just focusing on this. I have the details of that, and how in each of the which are the sectors in the first phase, the stimulant given by the government, what are the sectors who are given support, MSMEs as given the maximum, emergency and facilities to business is 2 lakh crore, and rest you see this how much is coming to that. In the second phase of the stimulant which is given by the government of India, you can see what are the areas open to, whether it is helping the 61% growth rate or the 50 to 61% of the contribution area, and how this could be channelized. So I will just focus here and the total, the part one, part two, part three. Three times government of India prior to this announcement of a 20 lakh crore package was given three different times, three different stimulants, and how it is going to work. As the issues I have flagged in the beginning, so that these are the challenges, and this how, as an economist, we can think of. I have certain suggestions for you also, but let the discussion flow, and we will listen to other panelists also. So I will stop here, and I will hand it over to the coordinator. Thank you very much for giving me this information.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving us such deep insight about how economic burden is affecting this COVID-19 lockdown. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Manas Vishwas to present his topic on uh, predicaments of COVID-19. So, erupting challenges to address the pre-existing predicaments. So, Dr. Manas Vishwas.
At the outset, I thank the organizers of Suresh Gyan University and to the faculty, Priyanka Roy, for having invited me as a member for this webinar. I'll just set up my presentation. Yeah. So I just thought that since I am audible.
Yes, sir. Clear.
Yeah. So I just saw that since I am the medical person in this particular panel, and considering we are talking about the challenges of the present situation, which has been led forth by the COVID pandemic, I thought I would speak on, the in a little bit on the virus and the effects thereof to the healthcare system. So just to just to introduce, as we know, this coronavirus are a family of viruses that can cause illness such as common cold, severe acute respiratory syndrome, and Middle East respiratory syndrome. So these have been there before, nothing new. But in 2019, as we all know, in somewhere around November and December, there was this new coronavirus which was identified as a disease outbreak which was there at Wuhan, China. This virus is now known as the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2 or SARS CoV 2. And the disease which it causes is the disease of coronavirus 2019, and in short, it's called COVID 19. So that's the nomenclature. And thereafter, by March 2020, the WHO declared the COVID 19 as a pandemic. A little word about signs and symptoms. The problem with this particular virus is it's just like any other virus. It appears about 2 to 14 days after exposure. That is called the incubation period. And then there are common signs and symptoms, which include fever, cough, tiredness. Now, this happens in any viral infection, as you know, the common flu, which we call it. The other symptoms may include, shortness of breath or difficulty in breathing, muscle aches, chills, loss of taste or smell, of course, is very particular in this particular kind of a flu, headache, and chest pain. Now, the range of symptoms could be no symptoms, there could be mild symptoms, or even severe symptoms leading up to pneumonia. And one very important thing which is associated with this, that the severity of the symptoms increases with older age, chronic medical conditions like those who have got heart, lung, diabetes, kidney, liver conditions, and patients with cancer or other immunocompromised states. A word about when to see a doctor. So now we all know that the government has introduced the Arogya Setu app, which all of us are supposed to download, at least those who have. A lot of people today do have smartphones. Even migrant workers going from place A to place B have smartphones, which is very surprising, but that seems to be priority in life today. And so there is a self assessment tool. So one should regularly update your self assessment tool. When a person has symptoms, and a person may feel that there has been a possible contact and exposure, or there could be some emergency symptoms such as trouble of breathing, persistent chest pain, or pressure. And there could be, inability to stay awake, and there could be some blue lips or face indicating that there is decreased oxygenation. That's definitely the time when you should go and see the doctor. Now, how is it spread? It's so many things have come about regarding its spread. So I think in very very simple terms, the spread is by micro droplets, which you can call aerosol, and macro droplets. When we say micro droplets, that is from directly from person to person as it happens while a person is talking or when a person is coughing or sneezing. Now, these are micro droplets or aerosol, and these droplets can be inhaled or land in the mouth or nose of a person nearby. The other way which it spreads is macro droplets. That is, some of these droplets are larger than the aerosol size and they drop onto surfaces like floor or table, or even you may find it on door handles, etc. So that is called fomites. A person, any other person touching these fomites with the hand, so then, and the hand touching the face or the nose can lead to infection. So basically it is spread by micro droplets and macro droplets. What we need to know is about recent travel to a ongoing community spreading area. That is important. And if there has been a close contact with a person who's coughing or sneezing. A lot has been said about prevention. Now, all the uh, all the economic effects and alterations which have occurred is all how to contain or how to do prevention. It's an aftermath of what we understand by prevention. So, what prevention practices which are being used are: avoid large events and mass gatherings, avoid close contact, stay home. Now that stay home is the one which has caused all this lockdown. Wash hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, or use an alcohol based sanitizer, which we are all doing. But it's important to know that these sanitizers, please look at the bottle, and they should at least contain 60% alcohol. It's only when it is 60% or more that it kills the virus. And of course, the mask. Now, it's important also to note that surgical mask and N95 respirators should be only used by healthcare providers. All others, when they are moving around, can wear a simple cloth mask, which should be washed daily and then used again. So one can have one can have two or three of these cloth masks. And important thing is to wash. Cover the mouth and nose with elbow, like so many videos have come across. Sometimes it is actually good to have the WhatsApp because it tells a lots of things. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. And then, in any particular institution or areas, one should disinfect high touch surfaces such as doorknobs, light switches, electronic, and counters. Wherever these are, one should do that. And stay home from work, school, colleges, and public areas. So public areas, could be malls and cinemas, etc. Now, how do we put the SARS-CoV-2 genie back in the bottle? Now, that is being the main, lookout as of today. So what is important, and these terms will keep coming. So there is isolation and quarantine. And then in epidemiology, there are two paradigms which are called containment and mitigate. So isolation is isolation of a person who is already COVID infected and showing signs and symptoms. So when you separate that individual from the community, that is called isolation. Quarantine is the word which is used when a person may have been exposed or come in contact with another COVID positive case, but actually is not COVID positive, that and showing no signs or symptoms, but is isolated because as the incubation could be anything between 2 to 14 days. So when you separate that individual from the community, that is called quarantine. Now, a very important thing is to know about what is containment and what is mitigation, because these are the words which are used by the government. So the word containment is used at the start of the outbreak, where we do a tracking and dissemination. And how do we do the tracking of the dissemination? We do testing. And in this period of time, we do isolation and individual quarantine. one should always remember that contact tracing is resource and time intensive work, and it is a very expensive kind of work. At this point of time, social, and I would say a more important, a better word would be physical distancing, which should be done. And the government can also announce closure of schools, colleges, malls, cinemas, etc. And what does all this containment do? It leads to the flattening of epidemic or pandemic curve. We've heard much about flattening of epidemic and pandemic curve. So we'll see a curve later and we'll know what it means. And then we come to the next paradigm, which is called mitigation. So mitigation is when the disease has gone out of bounds, the control has decreased, or it is just cannot be controlled. So there is redeployment of public healthcare workers away from contact tracing and disease surveillance. And there are efforts for a broader reach. But at the same time, we are looking at, since it can't be controlled, we are looking at herd immunity. That means everybody would develop antibodies to it. Many would probably suffer or even die, but most will not. As you know, so the mortality is only between 2 to 3%. So here is the time of mitigation when the government starts thinking of opening of schools or opening or reopening of business, but at the same time to protect employees and customers. So when we open schools, colleges, we also have to have uh, things in place which would protect the people who are going to attend the schools and attend college and various other institutions. At the same time, the hospitals are prepared for a surge of new patients. And of course, the social and physical distancing, which was already started, has to continue at this period of time. And of course, there has to be cancellation of gathering and events in this phase. So let's see what is the current status of at in India. As of morning of yesterday, the confirmed number of cases were 139,000 in the country, and the deaths amounted to 4,000. And this was an increase in 24 hours of about 147. Now, look at the daily change curve which we have. From the period, say, for the entire month of March and almost to the end of April, the rise of the COVID cases was not that much because of, as at that time, the first phase, the first paradigm, that is the containment, was going on and it was successful, and more or less it's a kind of a plateau. It's from about 8th of May or 1st of May that the curve has suddenly become steeper, and on 24th May in the country there are already per day about 6,767 new cases which are occurring. So these are the states which show a very high incidence of the confirmed cases as well as deaths. Maharashtra, as you know, is leading at the moment. Then we have Tamil Nadu, and the situation isn't also too good in Gujarat, Delhi, and Rajasthan. A bit about phases of pandemic. So what we need to know is there are 6 phases, and you would all agree right now we are at phase 4, that is acceleration interval. So we have gone past phase 1, 2, and 3, and unfortunately right now India is in phase 4. That means the cases are in accelerated numbers which are going to happen. The deaths are going to be probably more, but at the same time, we also hope the recovery of the patients are also there. So, talking about challenges, and I would here mainly talk about healthcare challenges. So, COVID 19 has reached the community spread phase. We all know that's phase 4, and that's the acceleration interval. It affects all, rich, poor. There is no barrier to caste, creed, religion, so low socio-economic, high socio-economic, all countries. So it affects all. There is now difficulty in stopping its spread, which is a major challenge. There is problem in adequacy in testing in the country. There is no treatment yet. Most places the drug trials are on. You must have heard about hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir or plasma therapy. All these things are going on, but there is no specific treatment. Most of the treatment is supportive, or unless the patient is really gone to a certain stage of pneumonia, then patients are put on ventilator, and many drugs are being tried. But that's the challenge. There's no treatment yet, and there is no vaccine yet. Trials are started, and however, even though there are claims, but generally till date in the world, it takes about 12 to 18 months time for any vaccine to really come out and prove its efficacy. So the other healthcare challenges are adequacy in healthcare infrastructure, by which we mean the the number of beds and the number of hospitals which have been turned into COVID hospitals, medical supplies, and also the number and trained healthcare personnel which are going to tackle this particular pandemic. There is a major shortage of availability of beds in the hospitals in our country. Just to give you an idea, the beds per thousand population in China is 4.2, in Germany it's 8.3, and even in Iran it's 1.5. And the national average beds in our country is 1.1363. That's the national average per thousand. So that means there's 1.13 bed per thousand population hospital bed in our country. And look at these southern states, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, which is at a national average. And the other states like Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, they are way below the national average. So we have a real problem here in the next 2 months. The cost of the healthcare to the individual. Majority of the Indians finance their healthcare themselves. Now, here is this interesting chart which shows that there is an index called out of pocket expense for current healthcare expenditure, which means that 62% of Indian population have their out of pocket expenditure when they're getting a treatment, in comparison to, let's say, United Kingdom, which has got the National Health Service, NHS, and United States of America, where there is insurance system. Only 11% of the people would be doing an out of pocket expenditure, and in UK only 16% as compared to in our country, which is very, very high. In our country, there are only 118 government approved laboratories at the moment. Private labs are now authorized to conduct the tests, and some of the companies are making their own self tests. So we now know also that the ratio of healthcare personnel to the number of patients is uh, very low in our country. Most hospitals have separate corona disease ward as of now, ICU and dedicated medical team whose members work for 5 days and then are quarantined for 7 days. So that's how the challenges are being met. The health workers also battle their emotional stress and exhaustion. And the thing which is also happening is there has been isolation, quarantine, and even deaths of healthcare personnel. So, how are the hospitals coping with the challenge? So, there is repurposing of resources by the hospitals. That means there's diversion of the resources within their own hospitals. So, you divert the beds, and you divert the ventilators. Uh, you also divert the healthcare personnel to designated COVID ward or designated COVID hospital. So, and also there has been temporary closure and postponement of planned surgeries. So, since I am a cancer specialist, I would like to just give you an idea as to what is happening to the cancer patients by COVID. So, there is, of course, substantial evidence that mortality due to untreated cancer is much more in the population than infection due to COVID-19 virus. It's very important to understand this. That if you leave a cancer patient untreated, there are much more. There's a 50% chance a cancer patient would die as compared to that of a COVID patient. So the treatment of cancer and its complication, therefore, it remains an emergency or a semi-emergency situation. So to us, the very difficult decisions are to be made for prioritization of both active treatment for cancer as well as palliative care. And of course, at the same time, we have to keep dangers of surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy in a COVID positive cancer patient. So, when a cancer patient is COVID positive, the danger of the surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy increases. So, that is one big problem. So, what happened and how we went about it is that initially, of course, there was this lockdown period for 3 weeks. Almost all surgery and treatment of cancer, actually came to a standstill. Then we all realized that more people are being harmed if things are not being treated. So we went into the phase of preparedness. That is what the plateauing did. That everybody got prepared for the COVID. So the preparedness for intensive monitoring, ventilation, and we started expecting overloading of hospital systems. So there was diversion of the manpower and equipment. So I feel that the plateau effect, which was there due to the government lockdown, did really help to regain and reallot the manpower and hospital equipment. So here are certain dictums regarding cancer treatment. Emergency treatment, if the patient is condition is unstable, so emergency treatment has to continue. And when hospital resources are available, then and without any compromise to the diversion, that means diversion of the resources, then there should be no delay in surgery, chemotherapy, or radiotherapy if the intervention is expected to result in a substantial overall survival gain or improvement in quality of life. However, there are certain changes which we have made. Routine visits can be changed by telephone and video calling. Oral medication can be delivered at patient's home. Investigations can be done in the local facility and near patient's residence. So, and any of the tumor board meetings, we would do it on a virtual platform. But
What's
at the
the
same
story?
time, there should be utmost priority to the safety of healthcare personnel, and all the echelons of healthcare workers should be well trained in the use of PPE. It should be available. The PPE should be implemented, and there should be a judicious redeployment of all healthcare resources. So, so with that, I end my presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manas Vishwas, for giving us in-depth insight on COVID-19 with pre-existing problems with healthcare challenges that we are facing in nowadays. So now I would like to call upon Dr. Varun Narayan Mishra for the question and answers round. Dr. Varun Narayan Mishra, please, sir.
Firstly, thanks to Dr. Santosh Kumar sir and Dr. Manas Vishwas sir for such a nice and insightful talk on the COVID-19 and its impact. Received questions and queries. So, sir, there are some questions for Manas Vishwas sir.
Yes,
The
yes.
first question is there, sir. What are the challenges for the healthcare sectors now? And
There is a disturbance coming in the audio.
for you that what are the challenges for pandemic?
Voice is not coming.
Really, there is
Some
some
noise
kind
is
of
there.
Varun,
Yes,
Your
sir.
voice is unclear. Please be
Dr.
reachable.
Yeah, your voice is very clear, Dr. Suraj.
Please change the room when you're asking a question. Don't sit with Priyanka. Change the
Yeah.
room. You have the same room, sitting rooms. That's why it's echoing. Change the room and ask again.
So we are in the different room, sir.
We are in the different
Yeah.
room. My
Okay.
voice is clear.
Please be
My
loud.
voice is clear now.
No.
I think you got low bandwidth. Priyanka, Dr. Suraj, you are very
Priyanka,
clear.
instead you can put a questionnaire.
Sir,
Take a questionnaire from Varun.
sir, I will just ask. This is a question from me only. So,
Yes.
there's a question is that कि with COVID-19 pandemic, how other communicable diseases can be handled by the policymakers and the healthcare sectors? How can we handle it specifically to contain this endemic situation in the country?
So, so if you're talking about COVID pandemic, which we are at this moment of time, so as you know, it at present the COVID pandemic has already reached its phase 4. That means we have gone beyond containment, which was there at lockdown 1, 2, 3, and now we have reached the stage of mitigation. That means the proportion. That means more and more number of people are being found COVID positive who are kind of unconnected with the previous COVID positive person. We are not able to trace other people. So it is gone. So contact tracing is out now. There is no more contact tracing going on. So it is out of so now bank upon more on wearing of mask, social distancing, testing, and treatment. And finally, slowly letting the lockdown get over, and in gradual way, the work, the environment, everything has to open up, and finally there would be a herd immunity. Everybody will become positive, but just like it happens in other diseases, that people don't really die because they develop immunity, and that is finally what is going to contain this virus is going to be there for the next 2 years. So these
So,
are this.
yeah. Okay. So there is
Hello.
another question by Ravi. He is asking that what do you infer by the plateau effect? So many of the audience have not been clear with the plateau effect.
Okay, so the plateau effect is when the s- see this when an epidemic or a pandemic strikes, there is a logarithmic increase of cases. That means from one person 10 will be affected, from 10 another 100 will be affected, so there is a logarithmic effect. So if we are able to achieve to decrease this logarithmic effect, so then this curve which we are tracing as the number of days on x-axis and the number of cases on y-axis, we would flatten this curve instead of seeing a steep rise. And during this flattening of the curve, this is called the plateau effect. So, not that the cases will not happen, the cases are going to happen, but at a reasonably much lower rate of increase. And what do we do in that time? We are there as in that time to prepare ourselves. The government prepared themselves. That means they allocated the resources. They have already, as previous speaker spoken, that so much funds have been allocated by Honorable Prime Minister for the healthcare section. And so all these preparedness is done. The hospital beds have been taken over recently. The in Maharashtra, as you know, 80% of the private hospital beds were taken over, and very recently in Delhi, 20% of beds, any hospital with 50 beds and more is being taken over the government. So it's just a preparedness, the number of ventilators being given. So plateau helps in preparing, not does not really help in stopping the epidemic, pandemic.
Thank you. Sir, there is another question by Pranay Duvete. He has been asking you, what are the challenges healthcare sector facing now, and what will be the healthcare system scenario after COVID-19? So, like basically the after COVID-19 scenario.
Yeah. So lots of things are going to change after COVID. This kind of we are already getting used to a lot of video calling with our patients. And not only cancer, but I have been talking to a lot of consultant in the US also. Almost unless there is an emergency of sorts, all uh, medical consultations are going to happen on video. So video consultation is going to be there. Then, getting your investigations done. They are going. People are going to try and get the investigation done at their local places, even their imaging studies as near as to their place of stay. Only at a certain emergency requirement, then the person would come straight to the hospital. The other thing which the hospitals are taking care is, many of you would be knowing that before we operate or certain procedures are done, uh, as of now, like HIV testing is mandatory. So a decade ago, HIV testing became mandatory. So similarly, what we foresee is that COVID testing will become mandatory. So this is definitely going to happen. It's going to become a part of the life. So these and of course every case which we do in the hospital is taken COVID positive unless otherwise proved, and so the healthcare personnel will be wearing PPE, that is personal protection clothing. And once this happens, the cost of the healthcare is also going to go up because the PPE costs money. So that is also going to go up. So all these changes are going to stay.
Thank you, sir. So now my question is to Professor Santosh Kumar, that as Dr. Manas Vishwas has told me, the cost of medical care will go up. So what are the criteria and what are the sectors that we can take care of, so that we can lessen the economic burden on the socially economic lesser sectors of our country? So
I
what
would
will be the government and yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest the entire gamut has changed. And in this gamut, what Dr. Manas was also telling that this COVID is going to go with us for at least 2 years of time. Plus, this will also be it will be with us forever. So in this context, we can say that I said that in my presentation, as long as this kind of uncertainty is there, definitely this impact on the economy would be there. As he said that also, Dr. Manas mentioned that PP is going to be a part of life of the medical practitioners or service providers in the medicine. So, in this context, the burdensome from where this cost would be covered. So, like the hospital care cost would increase, then definitely the burden has to go with the patients. So now the question is that how patients is going to react and cope with this in the light of entire unemployment, the challenges of cash crunch, and in the challenges of this slowdown economy. So one side, it is this cost of healthcare is increasing, and the second is also that COVID is going to stay, and the third is that we don't have much of money to spend. So in this context, as Dr. Manas was mentioning, that India's health insurance is very, very low. Like it's only say 28% of the people are under insurance cover. So 62% of the healthcare people are not going for the insurance. Maybe state has to come forward looking at this reality for providing some protection. As a state government we say that ultimate insurer. Whenever nobody takes care of a state is there. The state means the government is there to take care of that. But there are many agencies are there now. Insurance companies are there. Reinsurance companies are there, they can think of dividing a product, designing a product insurance company which is affordable, and also at the time of ailment or the treatment, it is very, very easy to repay to the hospitals, barring moral hazard. Which we say that moral hazard is a challenge, that somebody, even if they are not sick, they try to take this advantage of the insurance. This will happen, but I would say that this is going to be one alternative in insurance. Second alternative would be how fast we can invest in the strengthening of the health sector or public health facilities. Large number of money is now going to with 4% of the GDP, probably, if I'm correct. Government is planning to invest in the public health care. So this will have a definite jump, and the confidence of the people will also rise when our healthcare system, like when the COVID started in the month of January, that time we did not have much of mask, we did not have much of sanitizer, we did not have much as quarantine facilities, we did not have much of a testing facilities. So that time when people were very worried, and that's why lockdown was there. So that during the lockdown, the government made an investment for strengthening the healthcare system. So gradually, after putting those, we say that many of the state government reported that only 20% of occupancy in the quarantine center or the ventilator is there, and large number of patients are not coming. As a reminder, serious patients are not there much. So gradually, the supply demand in terms of even the COVID ailment or COVID affected patients, and also that they are looking for the high degree of intervention of medical care. So that was a huge gap, and so government decided to go for unlocking the system. So even if that strengthening of the health system only could give the confidence to the government, even if that happens, that would be taken care of. So I would suggest at this time that from the service provider side, the health facilities have to be increased for giving confidence and also taking better care of the patients who get affected. And secondly, people, those who are not have much money, government can incentivize some insurance where that people can take, like the Pradhan Mantri has already announced this. Ayush is a one example of health insurance. So how this product can also go into COVID. And during the stimulant too, Government of India has said that insurance companies has to cover pandemic. So that is another support. So this is there. So this kind of a combination would emerge, and many insurance companies and financial companies are also working how to cope with the situation and come up with the innovative products. So that's what my answer to your question.
So there is a question by Dr. Varun Narayan Mishra. He is asking that how coronavirus is affecting local ecosystem. So this is to you, sir, Santosh sir.
Okay. You have seen what we say ecosystem has changed drastically, both ways, positive and also that negative. I would say negative first in the sense that people have started living differently, meaning thereby people have cut their needs and they're depending on the essentials. What is essential, that is to be taken care of. So you can see that how we are living. We are not buying many shirts and trousers and shoes and pants and saris and jutas and so on and so forth. Whatever we have, we are trying to go with this. So this is what we are saying. We have minimized our kind of a consumption. So that one is that ecosystem, the consumption pattern has changed. And it will further change. It's not that even if the economy will open, the consumer will have different kind of a entire economic ecosystem in a different way. Like I said in my presentation, people might not be having the similar kind of a demand or choice of the consumer products which they used to have earlier. So this is also a change ecosystem. Third, in the sense of that we are saying in terms of the people's freedom to invest, probably that will also change. So investment will be very precarious in terms of where to make an investment or spending. So people will be saving much more with themselves rather than putting. So there is another ecosystem of economy which is coming to the entire environment of way of living is a complete paradigm shift. We say that earlier we were our entire generation and generations after generation we have been groomed to be together. Now we are saying this not to be together, stay maintain the social distancing, meaning thereby the physical distancing. So this is a paradigm shift. People had to adjust. Earlier, when you used to go meet people and relatives, we used to hug each other, closely play. All festivals are designed like that. So the ecosystem of festival would change. Our behavior has changed. School pattern has changed. The style of training and educational systems have changed. So now what I'm saying, as Dr. Manas is saying, 2 years will be like this only. So when any habit forming thing will continue for 2 years, like what we are seeing that children are, the other day we were having another seminar, and in that seminar we found that large number of children is having this screen trauma. The screen trauma meaning thereby earlier they were very friendly with playing with the mobile phones and all. Those who are going to schools and those who can afford. I'm not talking about the poor who doesn't afford this. And they are being now taught as a kind of a online by the education department. But this is not working well with them. Continuity of education is there, but ecosystem has changed in terms of teaching method, but also that trauma. So psychosocial is going to be a new emerging area where people, not only children, but young youth, they are not able to play, not going to see this. Entire sports activities has been banned. So what we see, whole activity of ecosystem has changed. And that we need to readjust ourselves. Somewhere we would be able to, somewhere we might not. So the maybe the role of technology would increase. We would be technology dependent. We would be video based discussion and festivals. Like I say with my friends also, to as my last point, that the marriage pattern will change. Maybe that those dulha dulhan and the parents will of each other will go, and somewhere from there they will book the, all the invitees will get this home delivery food, and they will say that whenever you bless that money, whatever you give to them, and you just say that you pay Google Pay and it will come to the parents' house. This kind of a thing will not is not be a kind of a surprise to us. This might go as a business innovative model in marriage or in rituals or other rituals. We say somebody would take care of this. So what I'm saying is this is a side of one side is a global phenomena is going to happen, and second is that definitely the least pressure on the road and the oil prices will go down. The demand for oil prices will cut down. People will not like mobility much. They will be scarce. They will not be comfortable traveling to one city to other city. They will heavily depend, even if they have to go, they will go and prefer their own transport system, those who can afford. So many things would change. I mean, we have to wait and watch. As Doctor said, Dr. Manas, that to draw a kind of a framework, what kind of a ecosystem would be, uh, we have to wait for some more time, and then we can clearly define that what would be the new paradigm or a new ecosystem of our adaptability.
Thank you so much, sir. Very informative. Okay, I would ask anybody else have any questions to ask from any of the panelists? Anybody else with the questions?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
yes, sir.
I am Aditya Kumar. Please answer my question, Professor Santosh Kumar, sir. What are the
Mhm.
future of middle class family?
Yeah, you said about the middle class family.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
About the middle class family, this is a transition period.
Yes,
Uh,
yes,
you
sir.
know,
Yes, sir.
yeah, this is a transition period for everyone, and for the middle class is going to be middle class. We say that we adjust very fast, although we face the challenges, but our adaptive mechanism over the years, we see that middle class has a potential to adjust in the lower environment also, and also adjust in the higher environment also. We can that middle class can adjust in the plenty also, and they can adjust in the scarcity also. So that flexibility model, I always say this in the middle class, but middle class is going to pay the brunt, because in terms of the job loss, large number of middle class people might face the challenges of the job loss. So there you can see that middle class have to readjust differently. They cannot keep depending on a kind of. They will also have a different mechanism of livelihood earning. different mechanism of interaction pattern, different kind of a mode of movement and meeting people and all. So that's what I said, that probably we need to wait also for some time and see that how things are moving. And accordingly, the middle class also have to adjust. So I see that middle class is very flexible, but also they go through the different challenges. And the time is going to very, very tough for them also. Because large number of people as in the middle class are working in the service sector or manufacturing sector. They are employment based. They are not the entrepreneur maximum. They are dependent on the others' investment. So how the economy moves, that would also determine the economic plight of the middle class. So we are hopeful with the 20 lakhs of crore of package that quickly in 2-3 months of time things would come by. But I'm very much hopeful that everything remaining constant and will move further. We see that in the month of or December end, January 2021, Indian economy would start booming again, and probably that would a good respite for the middle class also. Thank you.
So there's another
Thank you,
question that
sir.
I would like to ask, that middle class and higher economic classes are not very much burdened by this crisis. The problem is right now we are seeing every day is the migrant, the lower, the people who are falling under the low economic strata. So what are the steps that a government or the government policies are for the lower economic strata, not for the middle class? Because if you say about the insurances, it is mostly the middle class who are going for the insurances. The lower economic strata and the migrant workers, they don't go, they don't opt for insurances because they have to live by day to day earnings. So what are the available services that is there for them, because most of the population is coming from there.
Yeah, I would agree what you are saying. In terms of that middle class, you are saying that not in a problem. ऐसी बात नहीं है. They are also into trauma, and we say that their things are better where you are dependent on the last working in the government sector or in your formal sector. You are getting the pay packet. You check checkbook is coming to you and saying that yes, you have that secured income. But those who are into different sectors, like say working in the tourism sector, those who are working in transport sector, those who are working in the productive sector, they are facing the brunt. So that is one case that middle class definitely is facing challenge. It's not the there is a roses bed. But yes, coming to the poorest of the poor, which I also highlighted in my presentation, the poorest of the poor is going to have a serious brunt. And that serious brunt, we say that one that we said that India has a 28 crores of population, 28% of the total population is below poverty line in terms of 1.95 or 1.75 dollar a day income. This will add to 25% more in the number. So 25% and 28%. So 48% population or 50% of the population would be below poverty line, meaning thereby 1 or $2 a day kind of. It's a kind of a global phenomena. So they are going to definitely face a brunt. I also feel as a kind of a migrant laborer, you said. I belong to Bihar. I'm working in Delhi. I'm also a migrant. There are hundreds of migrants working. Why we call as a migrant laborer all the time? It's pinching to call it a migrant laborer. Everybody is a migrant. Say film industry. Everybody is a migrant. They are coming from different. We don't say migrant actor. We don't say the migrant lyricist. We don't say that migrant professionals. We don't say we are migrant this and that and so on and so forth. So maybe from now onwards, we can start saying that as a kind of a professionals or the workers. And in India, everyone is free to move from one place to another place. Constitutional provision is there. So taking those people who are poorest of the poor, that social security measures in India is very, very poor. Maybe we have to work or recast our social security measures, not for this pandemic. This pandemic has given a lot of lessons to every people. So then they recraft that social security measures. If it happens, what kind of a program we should come up with, what kind of social welfare things we can do, how social this corporate social responsibility can be brought in. Many of the places, Honorable Prime Minister is saying that poorest of the poor should be given pay packets or don't cut the pay. What is not happening in reality? Even the car washers who are coming, the maid servants are not coming and they are not being paid. So these particular group is really having the serious bill. And so that the entire social system, we say that entire social ecosystem, volunteerism, compassion, love, this have to be brought in. And this COVID has given this kind of people have become humane. So that's what we are saying. Try to build on that and have a more of a compassion, love in the public policy too. That will probably going to protect us and the poorest of the poor. Thank you.
So, sir, there is a research scholar. She is asking a question that what is the hardest immunity prevailing rather than the inviting massive, transmission? So, this is a question to Dr. Manas Biswas that she is asking with how well you were talking about the herd immunity. So, like before coming into the herd immunity situation, how can we, pre- prevent ourselves, and how what is the prevailing scenario with that case? Manas sir, Dr. Manas, your mic is turned off. You Risha, please turn on the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes.
So as I also had mentioned before, that if you see now what phase we are in, so we have definitely into the phase 4. That means, no more, we cannot control by containment anymore. There is a balance between lockdown, economic loss, and finally again an economic stabilization. No country, especially a country like ours, can afford to be in lockdown for a long period of time. So what we need to do now, as to the question she asked, is that how can you prevent? So prevent, as of now, the prevention is basically social or physical distancing. Physical distancing is a better word, like I said before, and prevention of the aerosol spread, that is by wearing of masks. Avoid large gatherings, and for a long period of time, the school, colleges, and anywhere where there is going to be a compulsory groups which are going to be there, malls, cinema hall, gyms, swimming pools, those things will have to be kept shut down for quite some time now. And then we have to see the increase in number of cases, like it has happened in Italy, Spain, France, US, UK. It will happen. In India, it cannot be contained. It'll probably, the peak is yet to come, and the peak is predicted in by June, July. That is the peak when it is predicted, and after that the cases will come down, just like it has done in other countries. So, so all of us now, we have to take our precautions, as we keep talking about masks, distancing, and closure of big gatherings. We have to continue our meetings by on the virtual platform for quite some time now. Already, the school colleges are going to probably be opened in month of September. So this is the only thing which can be done before the herd immunity finally takes over, and the virus becomes a part of our life.
So how do we retrospect that the retrospect that there will be a herd immunity? Actually be
Yeah.
working.
So this immunity, like in H1N1 virus, which also killed a lot of people, the
Personal thought, why not use our technique and technology to save this pandemic? Now, my topic of today's presentation is how geospatial mapping can be utilized for identification of hotspots using its satellite-based remote sensing technology for the management of global fight against outbreak and pandemics. So I'll not go into brief details because my earlier panelists and the eminent scientists have already talked about lot about this coronavirus 2019, as it you already know it originated from Wuhan, China in December 2019, and it has infected more than 54 lakh 96,717 people. Means a large number of people has been severely affected by this pandemic, and nearly 3,46,293 persons have been killed. So means not only this pandemic has affected a large number of population, but this has also led to a loss to life. And this outbreak has spread from China to more than 100 countries. That's why this is called as pandemic. The basic difference between a pandemic and an epidemic is pandemic is throughout the world, and epidemic is restricted to any particular area. So you can see that more than 180 countries except Antarctica all are severely affected, and various medical practice and diseases related to corona, pneumonia, fever already has been talked. So I'll not talk in much detail about this. So next. So when you are talking about pandemic, it was very tough to understand what is pandemic. But when you see a map, for right now you're seeing a map on a screen. The map is the best thing through which you can understand the public who is not related to that field, a layman or illiterate, by seeing the color, by seeing the shape, he can identify where at which place I am located. For example, if you see the entire global map, you can see the global distribution, what is the distribution of corona positive cases, that cases across the world. So if that has been written in plain paper and pages, you won't understand it, and it's quite confusing. But when you see that in a form of map, that is more representative, that is more virtually, you can understand whether where the India stands, what is the country of other country, where is Africa, where is America. So the map gives the clear representation of any kind of disease or any landforms or any earth features. So from the current map, you can see that the entire world is being affected by this corona disease. That's why it's called as pandemic. And if it was restricted to only a particular part of India, then we could have called as epidemic. Now next, again in the form of maps, because we are a personals who are directly making using satellite remote sensing. Satellites is a technology that is beyond the control of humans. For example, recently there was an attack in Uri, and along the borders, we have got enemy states. So what those enemy states or countries are doing, nobody can go and here have an interaction or instruction. So the only thing through which you can see whether that enemy country or whether the glaciers you are talking are that the glaciers are changing, melting, or whether there is a pre and post, there is a flood. Now you don't want to assess what are the areas which are severely affected by flood. So nobody cannot go to that area because that is detected or detached, because all has been submerged in water. It is a flood inundated area. So the only thing that can go and that can provide a real time information is a satellite image, because time is money. You spend more time in finding that will be tough for you, and that can result in loss of life. So that's why satellite based and GIS technique together is a component technique that provides a real representation of any part of the earth. By seeing the current map, you can see which are the areas where you can go for travel, which are the areas where it traveling is around, and with what restriction. So map is the clear representation of the area. The same is for the India. That was the global scenario. Now we are going for the Indian scenario. You can see that this the number of confirmed cases and number of death is represented through a form. So when we are seeing a map and we are providing an index, so you can see by the index what are the number of portions in each and every state, and what is the death condition, where is the states which are having more number of confirmed cases, and which are the states which are having more number of death cases, and whether they have got any positive correlation between them, or there is some which are the factors that are responsible, that will be talking in coming slides. This is already given by, you can see that over the period of time after lockdown, the number of cases has been increasing. So in the current this slide, I'll be showing a case study related to COVID that our research team has made, and this paper has been published in an and accepted in the international publication house with more than 4 impact factor. That I'll be showing little part of that, because that is a copyright materials. I've received the acceptance, so I cannot disclose the entire thing. I'll be giving some brief. So I'll give a brief about GIS also, because many of the persons who may or may not be attending, or they are not knowing about what is GIS. So GIS is an information that is used to store, capture, manipulate, analyze, and finally all the data in terms of spatial location. For example, I'll make it more easy. If I search a name with a place called Jaipur, so if I search by the name, the place Jaipur can be in Pakistan, the place Jaipur can be in America, the place Jaipur can be in Jharkhand, the place Jaipur can be in Andhra. Because with the same name, we can have a multiple attributes. But if we attach geographical dimension or the geographical latitude, longitude, that is the unique ID of each and every earth feature. Just like, for an example, we have got a Aadhaar card that is connected to our thumb or finger or eye connection, and that is unique for each and every person. In the same way, the entire earth, the geographical latitude and longitude is the unique value. So in remote sensing and GIS, we take this unique value for identification and mapping, and through that we can identify at what geographical area, what is the condition, and what is the present scenario in that area. So how does GIS does? So GIS does is where the things are. The most important thing is that you have to identify the area. Right now, you must be hearing about many donations after COVID. We are into red zone, we are into orange zone, we are into green zone. So that was a concept provided by our research to the government as well as in different publication house. So how that concept came? Now each and every person knows whether I am into green zone, whether I am into orange zone, or whether I am into zen zone. For mapping or for making those kind of donation, first you have to map each and every real earth features, and you have to see the relationship with each and every earth features, and finally at what place you are located and what will be the scenario. So I'll discuss this. The beauty of this remote sensing and GIS is it's a multidisciplinary subject. Generally, if you know that a person who is doing civil engineering or mechanical or electronics, if he wants to pursue a MTech degree, he must have an undergraduate degree in that subject. But for remote sensing and GIS degree, it's a multidisciplinary. So any person from any discipline, whether he is from computer science, whether he is from forestry, whether he is from urban planning, whether he is from water, can use this technique for the management of any resources. Like in the current study of forestry, for example, a forestry person will say how it can be applied. So you see that the government of India is making the entire forest resource information system, because many of the resources are still unexplored and inaccessible. You cannot go to each and every place in Himalayas, Sikkim, Arunachal, or the mountainous terrains, or even in the desert. So the only thing that can go is a satellite, and that can be provided. And using that satellite images, a forester can identify whether the forest change is increasing or decreasing, or whether there is a encroachment. In the same way, for water conservation, if we are going, which are the possible sites. In the same way, we have applied this GIS and technique for mapping, measuring, monitoring, evaluation, and modeling for COVID-19 disease. So I'll take a case study of Ramganj area of Rajasthan. That was a sample case study for which we drafted and we submitted the report to ICMR, Government of India, and different publication house. And our paper has been accepted. So I'll be briefing some part of that. I'll not show the major part because that is a copyright material. So in that, first we have taken a high resolution satellite images with 0.5 meter spatial resolution. Now, what do you mean by spatial resolution? The more is the spatial resolution, the better is the quality, and the more is the information. So in this lockdown period, if you want to see what is the dimension space of the urban, whether the urban is having a residential, commercial, semi-commercial, recreational, different land use, land cover properties has to be mapped. So you cannot go into the field right now. So the only thing that can go and that can map is a satellite. So we procured a satellite and we map the entire land use, land cover at up to level 4, where each and every properties like residential, commercial, industrial, hospital, community, road lines, railway lines were mapped, and this were used for making the utility service. You can see the map where the hotspot, this hotspot is the super spreader, and the first person who was identified positive in Rajasthan, and we have taken his location as our basis, and then we have created the entire geo database, and the modeling has been performed. So using this map, you can see that the various earth objects, where they are stationed and how relationship they have with respect to each other, that can be easily mapped using satellite remote sensing. Now, landscape mapping is the foremost important thing was to for zonation of red, green, and blue zone was identification of hotspot. Now, what does you mean by hotspot? Hotspot means whenever a person is found tested positive from corona virus, that person house or spatial location is set as hotspot. Now, what we have done, we have taken the secondary data, and that secondary data was converted into primary data and was overlaid into the GIS domain to find out the specific location of that hotspot. When we have identified that hotspot, then after we created a proximity zonation zone, means as we go away from the hotspot, your chances of being positive reduces. So the we as you are closer to the hotspot, you will be more susceptible or likely to be affected. So what is the range? What is the distance? So in the current study and on the basis of various questionnaire that we did with different government officials, various personals, various students, and on the basis of that, we came to the conclusion that from the origination of the hotspot will take 350 meter as the red zone, from hotspot 700 meter as the orange zone, from hotspot 1050 meter as a blue zone, and from the hotspot 1400 meter as the is the green zone. Now, on the basis of the location, if you are located in the outer periphery of this buffer, you can feel like that you're safe. The difference between our model and the government model is the blue zone is missing in the government model. The only difference that we have in the current model that the government is doing. So what we have given, now each and every person was talking about what should be the sampling technique, what should be the criteria. So on the basis of zonation into red, orange, blue, green, and that is the location from the hotspot, we said the portion which are having in the red zone must have a sampling of 70% sampling should be done. Portion who are staying have in the this orange zone 50% sampling is doing, and the portions in the blue zone 30% sampling, and in the low areas or the outer periphery areas where you are located and you are more safe, where 20% of sampling can be done, and that can the same has been given to the district administration to do samplings in the affected areas. Now, using satellite remote sensing helps not only in mapping the each and every land cover features, but also to map the various sites or the places where you can go for the quarantine or the isolation center. Generally, in Rajasthan, when it started, there was huge disagreement among the persons or the people that the persons are being taken to 40 or 20 kilometers away from its location for being settled in an isolation center. So GIS provide you the potential sites so that you can stay or station your isolation or the positive wards. For example, if I am being contacted in a particular area, what are the possible nearby sorts where I can go for isolation and quarantine, with how many number of wards, how many number of beds, each and every information can be brought, and we can see that using that information system, if a particular stadium is booked and fully covered, we can go and shift the that portion who is COVID affected to a nearby location. And that is all on the basis of their spatial relationship, where each and every road, where each and every Nala road, Pakka road, Kacha road has been mapped, has been given with an attribute, and their connectivity has been mapped to identify the suitable sites where you can go, like the isolation sites in the current study that we took was government hospitals, then various hostels, hotels, private hospitals, schools, stadiums. So these are the specific locations, and from that hotspot we can see which is the shortest distance where we can shift this patient in case there is a medical emergency. Next, each and every portion is saying that our model says if you adopt our model, we want that this red zone should be confined. But if you won't allow the model or the recommendation, this red zone will gradually convert orange, blue, and green zone into red zone. So now if you see that after this log 4.0 and log 3.0, you will see that there is more change in the dynamics. Previously, the areas which were into green zone are gradually converted into zone. That is because the persons who are staying in and around this red zone has migrated to their places, like in Rajasthan, like in Bihar, like in UP. I come from, I have from Jharkhand. If you go there and you see the medical infrastructure over there, it's very poor. So if you allow the person to migrate from one place to another, he is a carrier of a disease. So instead of that, we have got our own models which says if you go into that, the spread can be contained into a particular place. So using this model, you can see of making the entire earth red or orange. So the orange zone also has the same facility. The only relaxation that we had at that point of time is one day in a week with one person was allowed. In the same way, in blue and green, the difference between our model and the government model is we said that nobody is allowed to move from their zone. Is the same for the migratory laborers, where the our model says ki if you have got for what could have the government done, it can have made a portal where each and a person who are staying in green zone, we said the persons, the marginal laborers or the agricultural farmers can go for cultivation, can go for construction of houses. So what government could have done, government could have made a portal where each and every farmer, the carpenter, or where the building materials persons could have registered, so that we in the green zone, if we were to open the industry, we have got the data bank. These are the person who are very good in carpentry, these are the persons who are very good in industries, and on the basis of that we could have transferred those same persons who are into green zone into the industry. Now even if you are saying that you are opening up with the industry, now the biggest challenge is all the migratory marginal workers have migrated. Now you don't have the personals to work in that zone. So even if the industry are open, you don't have the manpower. So if the government would have allowed and would had any registration portal कि जो जहां रहेगा वहीं रहेगा, वहीं काम करेगा, और उसको अपने हिसाब से, अपने इसके हिसाब से, नॉलेज के हिसाब से, ज्ञान के हिसाब से वही मिलेगा, तो उससे क्या होगा, this red zone won't have migrated into various, because if this virus goes to rural area, that can create a havoc in India. So this is the table that shows what is allowed and what is not allowed. Apart from this, our research group is also making daily basis. We are making the spatio-temporal dynamics. That was a case study. This is another study where each and every day our students, our research team, makes map what is the spatial dynamics of COVID of Rajasthan state. each and every place. Whether I am into Jaipur is into green zone, red zone, blue zone. So each and every day we make this map, and that is published in our website, so that each and every portion in the newspaper can understand at what place and at what location we are staying. Apart from that, we are also created and submitted a project to the government as well as ICMR and for publication, where we have identified the wards of Jaipur Municipal Corporation, which are at a very high zone, which are at very low zone, which are at a moderate zone. For example, if you take an example of a slum, even if you don't have a Dharavi for an example, in each and every place of a state or a district, there are various slum areas. So even if you don't have those any person being affected, if you don't concentrate on these areas, if a single person is affected in their area, can contaminate more number of persons. So we have proposed various models depending on the population density, education. There are various parameters we have taken, and we have created a risk map on the basis of those parameters to provide the administrator and the policy makers which are the wards with a higher risk, lower dips, and moderate risk. And finally, I'll conclude that remote sensing and GIS is the best tool for the location of the health and planning for disease identification and mapping. At last, it provides professional education and hands-on training in GIS communities for achieving the goal. Because you know that right now we don't have any medicine. So until unless we don't have a medicine, the only thing left with us is social distancing. And for social distancing, government is coming up with various norms. So those norms are based on satellite remote sensing and GIS fundamentals. Now in coming days, this district levels will be converted into taluk levels into panchayat, and at ward level, where each ward you will know this ward is open, this ward is closed, because you cannot disrupt the entire economic activity by COVID-19. So if you see that this GIS and remote sensing technology is a great help and has saved a lot of life. And with this, I say that please stay at home and have social distancing. And with this, I end my presentation. Thanks a lot for providing me for this talk. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, sir, for such in-depth knowledge about the how GIS works and how GIS can be incorporated with the this present scenario with the COVID-19. Now, I would like to call upon Mr. Pranay Diwate for addressing the summary of this webinar. Before that, there is a announcement. Please kindly all of you turn on your cameras so that we can also take the pictures and keep a recording. So I request all the participants to turn on their cameras. Thank you. Over to Pranay Devati.
Am I audible?
We can have
Yes, sir.
first we can have a photograph. We can have a photograph.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Sure.
Rishabh, you say okay. Within 1 minute, we'll have a photograph. Rishabh, the host, will please take the photographs. All the participants are requested to on their video. Please on your video so that we can have a photograph. It's a request. So that we can have a group photograph.
Okay, sir.
All the participants, please on your video. Turn on your video for 1 minute, please.
Yes, sir, you can continue. I will take in the meanwhile.
Okay. Yeah, Pranay, you can continue.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Priyanka Roy, for inviting me. Am I audible and visible to all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Continue.
Good afternoon, all. I am from Center for Climate Change and Water Research. I am here to present a summary report for today's webinar session, which on topic is a global to local level impact of COVID-19 pandemic. I hope you all are enjoyed this wonderful session, which was very informative and giving the brief about what is the impact of the current pandemic from global to local level, which we are right now. We are all are facing this COVID-19 pandemic. So the first in our session, the first talk is given by Professor Santosh Kumar from NIDM on the topic socio-economic impact of COVID-19 where sir is talking about the economic recovery and pandemic of economic recovery during the pandemic COVID-19. Professor Santosh Kumar is not only given aware us about the present scenario, but also impact of COVID-19 pandemic in the future. He is giving his thought and expert opinion about the future impact, economic impact on the country. So he is addresses some key issue like international trade, global interdependence. What are the cash crunches is we are facing right now and in future, lack of effective demand, supply side chain. So that all are covered by Professor Santosh Kumar. He is also addresses the key issue about the India GDP growth and the contribution around 2017. So, sir is giving a very brief information about the economic things which we are right now facing and what the future scenario about the economic activity. Second expert talk given by Dr. Manoj Biswas sir is from Max Super Specialty Hospital, New Delhi, on erupting challenges to address pre-existing predicaments. Talk about the his talk about the virus and their effect on the health system. Sir is explained about the current status and phases of the pandemic. He is also given his thought on the healthcare challenges and effect of COVID-19. He is giving the very basic about what is the coronavirus, what is the sign and symptoms of the coronavirus, which right now the demand of the time, which everyone should know about what is the coronavirus, what are the sign and symptoms of coronavirus. Then he is also giving his thought and information about how it is spreading, what type of preventive measure we have to take, then what the mitigation we have to take for to avoid or to take care of our health system. So he is given the very good information about the COVID-19 and the effect of the COVID-19 situation on other patient. Like he is giving the one of the example of effect of COVID-19 on a cancer patient, how the cancer patient or other patient is affected by this coronavirus pandemic. So thank you very much, sir. The third one, this talk is followed by the question and answer session, which was the very most important part of the any webinar or any session, where all the queries of the participant is answered by our expert and clarify all the doubts. That was the most fascinating part of this session. The question and answer session is a very good one. All the participant question is answered by our expert. The third talk is addressed by Dr. Suraj Singh from Center for Climate Change on geospatial mapping of coronavirus hotspot using space-borne technology for the management of global fight against the outbreak and pandemic. He's explained how the remote sensing and GIS technique is used for identification of hotspot and solution to the space-borne technology for the fight against the COVID-19. He is also given the model which already successfully implemented in the Jaipur for assessment and control of the COVID-19. He's also giving the what is the importance of the remote sensing and GIS, how we can control the that COVID-19 pandemic and how we can use the GIS technique for the to fight against that COVID-19. Thank you all the experts for sharing the very knowledge for of the different respective field to all of us. Thank you very much. Over to Priyanka Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Pranay Divate. And now I take this opportunity to give the vote of thanks on behalf of entire team of climate change and water research. I thank Professor Santosh Kumar from NITM to enlighten us with the crucial aspect of socio-economic burden due to the COVID-19 crisis. I also thank Dr. Manas Vishwas for giving us understanding and the issues and pre-existing issues of medical health crisis that we are facing in today's scenario. I also like to thank Dr. Suraj Kumar for giving us an enlightened knowledge about GIS and how GIS platform can be used for various interdisciplinary sectors and specifically using for the COVID-19 problems, and we can similarly use these technology for other medical issues that can be addressed in the country. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Shruti Kanga, the coordinator of Center for Climate Change and Water Research, to give us this opportunity to present this webinar in such a successful manner. I would also like to thank Dr. Varun Narayan Mishra for supporting us and giving an supporting staff ideas to how to go further with the webinar access. I would like to thank Mr. Pranay for giving the summary of the session. I would also like to thank Mr. Rishabh for acting as a technical support staff. Thank you all, and with the permission of Dr. Shruti Kanga, I request to close the session of the session.
Yeah, I'll add to this. I'll add to your this, and with that, we'll conclude. There will be a feedback form to your email. Within 5 minutes, you will receive a feedback form, and you have to fill that feedback form. And on the basis of filling that feedback form, you will be getting a certification. So please check your email for that form, fill it, and you will get a certification in your respective email ID. 100 certificates each day will be distributed. And thanks all for listening us, and have a good day. Stay blessed. We have social distancing. God bless. Have a
Thank
good
you,
day.
Dr. Suraj, and thank you, Priyanka. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Have a good day. Good day, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Very good session. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I call the session permission of Dr. Shruti to close the session.
I hope we have taken a group photograph.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, ma'am. We have taken a group photograph.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, ma'am.
Thank you. Nice collaborating with you.
Hello.